Never use public Wi-Fi without knowing this, and no, this is not going to be another generic, outdated warning telling you that the barista at your local coffee shop can read your Gmail simply because you're both connected to the same network. Because honestly, that specific fear, the one that has fueled an entire industry of scary headlines and VPN advertisements for the better part of the last decade, is genuinely considerably less accurate today than it used to be. And in this video, we are going to walk through exactly what has actually changed about public Wi-Fi security, why the old fear you have probably heard repeated 100 times is now genuinely outdated, and critically, the one specific, real, well-documented threat that absolutely still exists on public Wi-Fi networks right now in 2026, one that has almost nothing to do with the old fear everyone talks about, and everything to do with a specific moment that happens before your connection is even encrypted at all. So let us start by addressing the outdated fear directly, because understanding exactly why it is outdated is genuinely important context for understanding what the real threat actually is. Back when public Wi-Fi security first became a widely discussed topic, roughly between 2015 and 2022, the internet as a whole looked considerably different than it does today. A genuinely significant portion of websites still transmitted data without proper encryption, meaning anyone else connected to that same network using freely available packet sniffing software could potentially intercept and directly read your unencrypted traffic, your login credentials, your private messages, your browsing activity, simply by sitting nearby on the same shared network. And that genuine, well-documented vulnerability is precisely what fueled the entire wave of dramatic public Wi-Fi warnings that most people have internalized and continue repeating to this day. But here is the genuinely important update. The internet has fundamentally changed since then, with the widespread, now nearly universal adoption of HTTPS encryption across the overwhelming majority of websites, combined with the considerably more advanced TLS 1.3 encryption protocol that now underlies most modern web traffic. Someone sitting next to you at a coffee shop genuinely cannot simply read your Gmail or see your bank balance anymore purely by being connected to the same public network. And this is not simply a marketing claim. It reflects an actual meaningful update in official government guidance as well. Since the United States Federal Trade Commission specifically updated its own public guidance in March of 2026 to formally acknowledge that widespread HTTPS adoption has materially improved public Wi-Fi safety compared to the earlier era that originally generated so much of this fear in the first place. And this genuinely matters because it means a meaningful portion of the public Wi-Fi warnings you have probably heard repeated for years are, strictly speaking, considerably less relevant to how the modern internet actually works today than they used to be. And if this video simply stopped here, you might reasonably conclude that public Wi-Fi is now completely safe and there is nothing left to genuinely worry about. But that conclusion would honestly be just as inaccurate as the outdated fear we just walked through. Because the threats did not actually disappear. They evolved into something considerably more specific, considerably harder to notice, and, in some genuinely important ways, considerably more dangerous precisely because so few people currently understand how it actually works. And this brings us directly to the single most important thing this entire video is built around: the evil twin attack. And here's exactly why this specific threat deserves your full attention, far more than the outdated packet sniffing fear ever did. An evil twin attack works by an attacker deliberately setting up a completely fake Wi-Fi access point, deliberately broadcasting a network name, technically called an SSID. That is identical or nearly identical to a legitimate, genuine network you would reasonably expect to see in that specific location, something like airport free Wi-Fi or Starbucks guest or hotel lobby Wi-Fi. And when your device connects to that fake network instead of the real one, every single piece of your internet traffic, encrypted or not, now passes directly through the attacker's own equipment before it goes anywhere else. And here is the specific, genuinely critical detail that makes this threat so much more dangerous than the older, outdated fear we discussed earlier. Because the attacker now directly controls the actual network gateway itself, they gain the ability to interfere with your connection at a considerably earlier, more fundamental stage than simply reading already encrypted traffic passively from the sidelines, meaning they can potentially force certain connections down to unencrypted HTTP instead of HTTPS, intercept the actual encryption handshake process happening at the very beginning of your connection before your secure session is even fully established, and serve you convincing malicious content even when you believe you are specifically navigating to a legitimate, secure HTTPS website. And this is genuinely the key distinction worth internalizing. The old fear was about someone reading your mail after it had already been sealed inside an envelope, while an evil twin attack is about someone intercepting your mail before you have even sealed the envelope in the first place. fundamentally controlling the entire communication channel from its very earliest point rather than simply eavesdropping on already protected traffic from a distance. And it is genuinely worth understanding just how accessible this specific attack has become for anyone with even modest technical intent, since setting up a convincing evil twin network today generally requires equipment costing under $100, small enough to comfortably fit inside a single carry-on bag. And this is genuinely not a hypothetical, theoretical scenario dreamed up purely for a dramatic YouTube video title. Real documented cases have occurred specifically on commercial flights and inside airports, including one particularly notable case where a man in Australia was formally charged with 9 separate counts of cybercrime specifically relating to his use of evil twin Wi-Fi networks, having set up fake wireless networks across multiple domestic flights and airport terminals, presenting passengers who connected with a completely convincing, professionally designed fake login page, specifically engineered to harvest their email credentials, their social media logins, and various other pieces of sensitive personal information. And he reportedly operated this exact scheme for months before anyone actually noticed and intervened. And it is genuinely worth understanding why evil twin attacks like this one managed to remain undetected for so long, since unlike a dramatic, obvious hack that immediately alerts you the moment it happens, victims of an evil twin attack very often do not realize their information has actually been compromised until well after the fact, sometimes days or even weeks later when they receive an unexpected notification about a suspicious financial transaction or discover unauthorized activity on one of their accounts, at which point it becomes genuinely difficult to trace that specific compromise back to the exact moment and location where it actually originated. And independent security research specifically examining this exact threat has found something genuinely worth knowing the next time you are personally searching for a network to connect to in an airport or coffee shop. Testing conducted across real airport and coffee shop environments identified between 2 and 4 separate networks, all broadcasting identical or nearly identical network names, sometimes differing from the legitimate network by just a single character within each individual location tested. And it is genuinely important to be fair and precise here, since simply seeing multiple similarly named networks does not automatically confirm malicious intent on its own. Sometimes this pattern results entirely from legitimate infrastructure, multiple genuine access points, belonging to the same business, or interference from a neighboring, entirely unrelated network. But this specific finding genuinely illustrates the real, practical ambiguity you are actually facing every single time you scan for available networks in any public space, since there is often simply no reliable way to visually distinguish a legitimate network from a convincing fake one based purely on its displayed name alone. And it is genuinely worth understanding a second closely related threat that specifically compounds this exact same vulnerability, something called Auto Reconnect, a genuinely convenient feature built directly into every modern smartphone and laptop, specifically designed to automatically reconnect your device to any Wi-Fi network your device has, previously connected to before, without requiring you to manually select that network again every single time you happen to be back within range. And here is exactly why this convenient, seemingly harmless feature becomes a genuine security liability, specifically in the context of everything we just discussed about evil twin attacks, because your device generally identifies a previously known network purely based on its broadcast name. Meaning, if an attacker deliberately sets up a fake network using the exact same name as a legitimate network you have connected to, at some point in the past, your device may automatically reconnect to that fake network completely silently, entirely in the background, without ever presenting you with any kind of prompt or notification asking for your explicit permission first. Meaning you could genuinely be connected to a malicious evil twin network for a meaningful stretch of time before you even realize your device has switched away from the legitimate network you believe you are actually using. And it is genuinely worth understanding exactly how frequently this specific combination of threats, evil twin networks and captive portal phishing specifically, actually contributes to real-world security breaches, since recent industry research examining data breaches broadly has found that the human element, meaning a person making a specific individual decision that ultimately compromises security, was identified as a contributing factor in 62% of all documented breaches. And security researchers have specifically noted a genuinely important behavioral pattern worth internalizing here. An employee who has been thoroughly trained and would genuinely never click on an obviously suspicious phishing link contained within an email can nonetheless hand over legitimate corporate login credentials through a convincing evil twin captive portal page in under a single minute, precisely because connecting to public Wi-Fi has become such a completely routine, almost entirely unconscious daily habit for most people, that it rarely triggers the same kind of instinctive caution and skepticism that an obviously suspicious email link generally does in this specific behavioral gap. Treating public Wi-Fi connection as a completely mundane, automatic utility rather than as an active, meaningful trust decision is genuinely at the very heart of why this particular threat remains so persistently effective, even as broader public awareness of internet security generally continues to improve. And separately, broader research specifically examining organizational security has found that a genuinely significant 74% of companies surveyed reported having experienced some kind of security breach specifically linked to remote work or business travel, with unsecured public Wi-Fi consistently identified as one of the single most significant contributing risk factors behind these particular incidents, meaning this is genuinely not simply a theoretical concern relevant only to unusually paranoid individual users. It represents a real, well-documented, ongoing operational risk that businesses of every size are actively grappling with as remote. And hybrid work arrangements have become increasingly common throughout recent years. And now let us turn to exactly what genuinely matters most in this entire video: the specific, practical steps you can actually take to meaningfully protect yourself. Because unlike the outdated, overly broad fear we addressed at the beginning of this video, these specific recommendations directly target the real, current threat we have spent this entire video walking through in detail. And the first genuinely important step is to always verify a network's exact name, directly with actual staff at whatever establishment you happen to be in, rather than simply trusting whatever network name looks most plausible or familiar in your device's available network list. Since a 30-second conversation with an employee behind the counter genuinely eliminates the core ambiguity that makes evil twin attacks so effective in the first place. And this single habit alone genuinely represents one of the highest value, lowest effort security practices. As available to you, the second genuinely important step is to disable automatic Wi-Fi reconnection specifically for public or unfamiliar networks within your device's own settings. Most modern smartphones and laptops allow you to specifically configure this behavior on a per-network basis, meaning you can maintain the genuine convenience of automatic reconnection for networks you trust completely, your own home network specifically, while requiring manual, deliberate confirmation before your device ever connects to a public network. Directly closing off the specific silent background vulnerability we discussed earlier in this video, the third genuinely important step, and honestly the single most broadly effective tool available for addressing this specific threat comprehensively, is using a reputable virtual private network, commonly known as a VPN, whenever you are genuinely uncertain about a specific network's legitimacy, or whenever you are planning to handle anything even moderately sensitive, banking, work-related logins, or personal accounts containing meaningful private information while connected to any public network. And here is exactly why a VPN specifically addresses the evil twin threat so directly and effectively, because a properly configured VPN establishes its own independent, separately encrypted tunnel for your traffic that remains protected, regardless of whether the underlying network itself happens to be legitimate or a malicious evil twin. Meaning, even if you do accidentally connect to a fake network without realizing it, a genuinely properly functioning VPN specifically prevents the attacker running that fake network from being able to read or meaningfully tamper with your actual traffic, since your data remains encrypted within that separate VPN tunnel throughout its entire journey. And it is genuinely worth understanding what actually distinguishes a reputable, trustworthy VPN provider from a considerably less reliable one, since not every VPN service marketed to consumers genuinely delivers the same meaningful level of protection. Reputable providers generally use strong, industry standard AES 256 encryption specifically, undergo independent third-party security audits conducted by genuinely recognized auditing firms, specifically confirming that the provider maintains an accurate no-logs policy, meaning the provider itself is not separately recording and potentially storing your own browsing activity, even while claiming to protect it from outside observers, and offer some form of traffic obfuscation specifically, designed to help disguise your VPN usage even while connected to a monitored or genuinely compromised network. And it is genuinely worth being a discerning, appropriately skeptical consumer here, since independent research, specifically examining a broad sample of VPN providers, found that while the significant majority supported meaningful traffic obfuscation, only a considerably smaller subset had actually successfully completed a genuine, independently verified no-logs audit conducted by a recognized auditing firm, meaning doing a small amount of research before actually committing to a specific paid VPN subscription is genuinely worthwhile, rather than simply choosing whichever provider happens to advertise most aggressively or offer the lowest introductory price. And a fourth genuinely important step worth understanding involves paying close, deliberate attention to captive portal pages specifically. those familiar login or terms of service screens that automatically appear the moment you first connect to many public networks, since these specific pages represent one of the most common effective delivery mechanisms for evil twin phishing attacks, precisely because users have become so completely accustomed to routinely entering information into them without much genuine scrutiny. And the specific practical guidance worth internalizing here is to treat any captive portal page that specifically requests your actual corporate login credentials, your email password, or any other genuinely sensitive account information with real active suspicion, since a legitimate public Wi-Fi captive portal generally has no genuine, legitimate reason to actually require your real corporate or personal account, password simply to grant you basic internet access, and a fifth genuinely important step, particularly relevant for anyone specifically traveling internationally, working remotely while traveling, or otherwise handling genuinely sensitive professional information while away from a trusted, controlled network environment, involves considering the use of a dedicated personal mobile hotspot, using your own cellular data connection specifically, as a considerably more secure alternative to public Wi-Fi entirely whenever you are handling something genuinely sensitive, since your own personal cellular connection is inherently considerably more difficult for a nearby attacker to convincingly impersonate compared to an open public Wi-Fi network specifically. And it is genuinely worth being honest and balanced in how we close out this discussion, because the actual accurate answer to whether public Wi-Fi is dangerous in 2026 genuinely depends considerably more on what specific activity you happen to be doing at any given moment, rather than simply where you happen to be physically located while doing it. For most genuinely low-stakes everyday activities, casually browsing general news websites, checking sports scores, or reading content that does not involve entering any sensitive login credentials or personal information whatsoever, the realistic security risk posed by modern public Wi-Fi, thanks specifically to the widespread HTTPS adoption we discussed at the very beginning of this video, is genuinely considerably lower than the older, more sweeping fear from previous years would have led you to believe. But for genuinely higher stakes activities specifically, logging into your online banking, accessing sensitive corporate systems and internal documents, or handling any kind of genuinely private personal information, the real, well-documented evil twin threat we have spent the bulk of this entire video walking through in careful detail remains a completely legitimate, currently active concern genuinely worth taking real, practical precautions against, and understanding this specific, important distinction, rather than either uncritically dismissing every public Wi-Fi related warning as outdated fear-mongering, or uncritically treating every single public network as an active, imminent threat, is genuinely the single most valuable, accurately calibrated takeaway from this entire video. And it is also genuinely worth mentioning that this exact same underlying evil twin threat is not actually limited purely to Wi-Fi connections specifically, since security researchers have also documented closely related attacks specifically targeting Bluetooth pairing processes, using broadly similar underlying techniques to intercept or manipulate connections between your devices and other nearby Bluetooth equipment, meaning the same general underlying principle genuinely applies. Considerably more broadly across your everyday wireless connectivity generally, verify what you're actually connecting to whenever reasonably possible, rather than simply trusting a device or network name purely at face value without any additional confirmation. And so, bringing everything we have covered together into one final, complete, and genuinely accurate picture, public Wi-Fi in 2026 is honestly considerably safer than the sweeping, sometimes borderline exaggerated fear that circulated widely throughout the previous decade, thanks specifically to the now nearly universal adoption of HTTPS and the considerably more advanced TLS 1.3 encryption protocol underlying most modern web traffic. But this genuine, meaningful improvement absolutely does not mean public Wi-Fi has become entirely risk-free, since the specific, well-documented evil twin attack, combined with the closely related auto-reconnect vulnerability we walked through in detail, represents a genuinely real, currently active, and honestly still considerably underappreciated threat that specifically targets the exact moment your connection is first established, before your traffic ever even reaches the point of being meaningfully protected by standard website-level encryption in the first place, and the specific, practical protective steps we walked through throughout this video, verifying network names directly with staff, disabling automatic reconnection for unfamiliar networks, using a genuinely reputable, properly audited VPN specifically for anything even moderately sensitive, treating captive portal login requests with appropriate healthy skepticism, and considering your own personal mobile hotspot for genuinely high-stakes activities specifically, collectively represent a genuinely accurate, evidence-based, and practically actionable approach to public Wi-Fi security that reflects exactly how the actual threat landscape genuinely looks right now in 2026, rather than repeating the same increasingly outdated fear that has circulated for years without meaningfully updating, to to reflect how the underlying technology has genuinely evolved. If you found this breakdown of the real, current risks around public Wi-Fi genuinely useful, please take a moment to like this video, share it with anyone in your life who frequently travels or regularly works from coffee shops, airports, or hotels, and subscribe to this channel so you continue receiving accurate, genuinely evidence-based security breakdowns that separate real, current threats from outdated fear, rather than simply repeating whatever headline happens to generate the most attention. Let us know in the comments below whether you personally use a VPN on public networks and whether you had already heard about the specific evil twin threat we walked through in detail throughout this video. And we will see you in the next video. Until then, stay informed, stay appropriately cautious rather than needlessly paranoid, and stay genuinely in control of exactly what your own devices are actually connecting to. And before we fully wrap up, it is genuinely worth addressing a handful of the most common questions people tend to ask. Once they actually understand this fuller, more nuanced picture of public Wi-Fi security, starting with one of the most frequently asked, does a VPN genuinely make me completely 100% safe on any public network? And the honest answer is genuinely no. A properly configured, reputable VPN meaningfully addresses the specific evil twin threat we walked through in detail throughout this video by encrypting your traffic through a separate protected tunnel, but it does not protect you from every conceivable risk if you are personally tricked into entering your genuine credentials directly into a convincing fake captive portal login page before your VPN connection has even been established. A VPN alone cannot undo that specific action, meaning a VPN should genuinely be understood as one important, valuable layer within a broader, multi-layered security approach, rather than as a single, complete solution that entirely eliminates the need for the other practical precautions we discussed throughout this video. Another genuinely common question people ask is whether free VPN services offer meaningfully comparable protection to paid, reputable providers. And the honest answer here deserves real, direct skepticism, since operating a genuinely secure VPN service, maintaining server infrastructure, undergoing independent security audits, requires real, ongoing financial resources, meaning free VPN services often generate their own revenue.